Hi, everyone. So glad you're joining us. For those who don't know me, I'm Tali Edut, one half of the AstroTwins. My sister and I are identical twins and the astrologers for Elle magazine and the founders of a top astrology website, AstroStyle. And our passion is bringing the stars down to earth with our unique system of applied astrology. And one of the big deal things that's happening in the skies in 2023 is that Saturn, which is the planet of structures and maturity, it gives us our challenges and our lessons, has moved into Pisces from March 7th, 2023 until February 13th, 2026. And Pisces is a sign that rules boundaries, our emotional health, our subconscious minds. And it's a time where we're going to have to get really serious about our mental and emotional health. There's going to be a lot of new energy coming in. And when you discover your astrology chart, you start to get curious about the inner workings. And then when you want to dive in deeper and really learn about that, what's going on with me and how do I process this? Therapy is the best solution for that. And so we have BetterHelp therapist Courtney Cope with us today, a Gemini Cancer cusp. Licensed marriage and family therapist. How are you? Hi, Courtney.
I'm doing great. I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you for having me, Tali.
Let's talk a little bit about, BetterHelp is a really unique way of offering therapy because it's online. And so what are some of the biggest differentiators between online therapy and traditional in-person therapy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest differentiator is going to be the fact that it is, of course, online and virtual. It does therefore expedite the process of getting started with therapy because you can log right on, get matched with a therapist. They usually have availability within the next week or so versus in-person care. Sometimes you can be waiting weeks and weeks or even months. What's also great is it takes a lot of the guesswork out of knowing what specialty you're looking for when you're doing it on your own, looking for in-person care, because BetterHelp has a lot of specialties right up front that you can pick from or talk about what are your priorities for what you want to be matched with. So it's like, again, expediting the process. And it's really neat as well that you get to choose whether your live sessions are done through chat messaging, audio calls, or video calls. Whereas in in-person care, you're just like sitting with someone in the room. So you have a lot of flexibility. And I think that makes therapy more accessible, less intimidating, and all around just like a really kind of even fun way to go about engaging with mental health care.
And BetterHelp has a couple of disclaimers about therapy that we want to share with you. Go ahead, Courtney, take it away.
Yeah. All right. We have some BetterHelp disclaimers here. First of all, BetterHelp does not endorse any particular method of spirituality or religion. And Courtney, that's me, opinions and statements are my own, and they may not be representative of the entire BetterHelp therapist network. Finally, astrology is not a replacement for a licensed mental health professional or mental health treatment, and BetterHelp is able to match you with someone who is a therapist that's based on spiritual preference, but that is a broad spectrum, and it may take a couple tries to find someone that shares your beliefs.
A lot more people are identifying as empaths these days, and that's one of Pisces keywords. So Saturn in Pisces affects everyone, no matter what sign you are. It's like we're all collectively embracing or resisting these challenges. Saturn is kind of the personal trainer planet. So it's going to make you work hard, and we tend to push against it. But, we expect that a lot more people will get in touch with that empathic side of themselves, maybe through even encountering their own resistance or some inner struggles. But we also know that empathic people will forget to take care of themselves a lot. So, as a therapist, you probably see that happening. And I'm wondering, what you would say to the empaths out there, which, everyone is when we connect to our feelings, about, how they could, benefit specifically from the support of therapy, even if they feel like everyone else is suffering more than they do. I find that that's just like, well, I don't deserve this. First, I have to take care of X, Y, Z, and this and that. And do you find that a lot with people?
Well, the first thing I want to clarify, the last part you said, is that suffering is not a competition, right? And like he
Mm.
who suffers the most isn't therefore the most deserving of therapy. And it's like, I think as empaths, from my understanding of, what empaths are, it's like they are folks, and I would even consider myself one, they are folks who are sensitive to other people's feelings, emotions. They are sensitive to what's going on in the world. There are nonverbal cues that they are picking up on in situations and in life. And it's important that, you kind of have a little bit of a superpower because you're highly sensitive and attuned, but it's important that as empaths are engaging with these different emotional frequencies, so to speak, that they're picking up on, that they don't necessarily join and become one with them. If you're
Ooh,
picking
so
up on
good.
sadness in the world, depression, whatever it is in the situation, it's like you can be a compassionate witness to that and
Mm.
be there, whether it's like for a friend or someone, and you can stand with someone next to them, but you don't have to enter into it. And the other piece that I think is really important is, even if you're picking up on it as an empath and saying like, oh, I really see this, sometimes just validating and verbalizing, to a friend or a loved one, like, I'm really picking up on a lot of, like, you're feeling confused and lost. And I just want to validate, like, these are valid feelings. And I get that. And even just being a source of validation for other people, like, that's how I see the superpowers of empaths being able to show up in a way where it's serving the world, but also not having to take it on and become one with the suffering. Does that
Oh,
make
that's
sense?
so good. I love the term compassionate witness. That's such an important one because, Saturn, it's funny, Saturn's a planet of boundaries and Pisces is a sign of boundlessness. So there's this like, where do I not join in and where should I join and how can I join without taking it on? And that's with the 24/7 news cycle we have. There's always, there's so much happening in the world, and some of it becomes clickbait. A lot of it does. It's like, in order to compete, you have to have these shocking headlines, and so how do you become a compassionate witness? That's a beautiful distinction there. And speaking of boundaries, are there ways that you could recommend for people to, start working with boundaries so that they can say, hey, this is, I know, like, just your suggestion of, validating their feelings is a good one. How do they, any tips for boundaries at all? Like, when you become sort of overwhelmed by the grief and the pain of the world and the suffering around you?
Yeah, absolutely. Boundaries are one of my favorite things to talk about because I see boundaries as the protectors of our peace and the protectors of our sanity. And so boundaries are these things, just to give like a quick definition, boundaries are these things that separate us from each other or from situations so that we can remain at our best and so that we can take care of ourselves and not take on that which does not belong to us. And so we could have physical boundaries, please don't touch me, emotional boundaries, mental boundaries, content boundaries, like I'm not available for talking about that, or I don't want to go there. Financial boundaries, there's all kinds of boundaries. And I think a good starting place for people is to ask yourself, where in my life do I currently feel resentful? Where do I feel drained? Where am I dreading doing certain things or interacting with certain people? And these answers are the clues to perhaps where your boundaries have become too permeable and need to be revisited and reestablished.
There's that all or nothing mindset that, oh, I feel resentful, this person's draining me, they're an energy vampire. We're so quick to label people. What I love about boundaries is that, it's like we don't have to just cut people off, cancel them, when we learn. Do you think that that's maybe a symptom of people having rigid or even too permeable boundaries, that they feel they have to cut everyone off instead of, just setting something in between there?
Possibly. I think it always behooves us to remain flexible and open-minded to, other people's lived experience. And when we do that, it becomes really difficult to, cut someone out of our lives or cancel them, whatever you want to call it, because we can still say, I'm not available to go there with you, or I don't want to engage in that. But you can still, you can still eat. It's just not going to be eating at my table. And that's fine, right? Like, I think that's a really balanced way to approach it.
Absolutely. And then there are the people who are going to push your boundaries and not respect them, and I know I've spent many a therapy session talking about that, and it's just to be able to even have someone witness you sorting through the process of finding where your boundaries are. I know that that's something that therapy really helps with a lot.
Right. And just having someone reflect back to you as an outsider, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm hearing. That can be so helpful, because even if we're self-aware, we're still living from the inside out. We're seeing the world through our eyes. Whereas when someone is sitting again as that compassionate witness externally, they can give us a new way of looking at situations. It's like, oh, I never thought about it that way, or, oh, you're absolutely right. So I think that impartial third party is such an added value for helping us attain personal growth and inner peace.
Now, over the past 7 or so years, there's been so much discord in the world. I mean, some might argue there always has been, but it's been amplified, and also within a lot of our families. So we have our differing views on everything from politics to vaccines to values. So a lot of people have been estranged even from their families or distant. But I want to bring up one of Pisces' favorite F words, which is forgiveness. I'm just wondering of some ways that therapy and therapists work with people to actually get to the point of being able to forgive, which is a broadly defined word, right? So, yeah.
It's a really good question. And I just feel it's important to clarify that forgiveness is number one, not something that any therapist can make anybody like do. And forgiveness is not even for other people. Forgiveness is for ourselves. Forgiveness is a gift that we give ourselves by saying, I am no longer going to hold on to this story that I've been telling myself that is causing me harm, that is making me feel disempowered, that is making me feel like a victim. And when I say story, I want to clarify, like, what happened, whatever it was, it is real. It's not something you made up. It's not a story. But because it's in the past, we're now revisiting it, and it is a story we continue to tell. So I think getting to a place of forgiveness is truly, to talk like Gen Zers, it's bringing main character energy to your life so that you can say, I'm not going to allow the upset of X, this thing that happened in the past, to continue to define my present moment or my future. I'm the main character of my life, not this thing. And I'm going to live my life on my terms. And so I think people are ready to forgive at different times, under different circumstances. One of my favorite, just kind of quick tips I could give in terms of like moving towards forgiveness or releasing is, I think a practical step you can do is do self-validation. And what I mean by that is you just sit down and you write without any filter, without any judgment. Here is the thing I am upset about. And you just pen to paper, on your computer, whatever medium or mode is right for you, just get it out. Don't judge it as it's coming out. Write until you have nothing left to write. And then don't reread it, delete it. Just read it, burn it in a safe place, right? If it's a paper, do something that is an act of letting go. And I've seen clients and people use this practice where they do this like every morning. And sometimes they do it for 2 weeks. Sometimes they do it for 30 days. Sometimes they do it for 60 days. And it's like just allowing yourself to get out what you need to say with no judgment, and then letting it go a little bit more every day. It almost does the work of forgiveness for you, because most people get to a place where they're like, I don't have anything else to say about it. I don't have any more negative feelings about it. And I'm just ready to move on. And to be fair, there might be some situations where it is important to have closure or to talk to somebody directly about a harm. And that's why I think the nuance of going to therapy is helpful, because your therapist can help guide you. Like, sounds like it would be really important for you to get that closure with this person. I'm just speaking in the general sense that we have no control over what anyone else is going to do or say, right? So even if we show up ready to make amends or ready to forgive, that person could do something else that upsets us all over again. So
And
it's like,
probably will, right?
if you're wanting to have something that you can do on your own time, in your own space, and not have it be dependent on anyone else's response to you, it's a beautiful practice.
It's because the more you grow and the more you take things on, the more you especially as often as women too, who tend to be more into astrology or female identified people, just that there's this sense of like, I'm alone. I shouldn't complain. Who do I think I am? I have it all. I shouldn't have problems. Or going to friends for advice when you actually need someone objective who's going to reflect back to you.
Sure.
Yeah, what do you think what would you say to someone who would be like, well, I talk to my friends and we go out for brunch. I don't need therapy yet. But therapy really differentiates itself in that way. Like, what's the
Yeah,
difference between therapy and brunch with friends?
right. Well, I like to think of it this way. Your friendships are about community. They're about making you feel connected and plugged into community. And they are a reciprocal relationship. You give, you take, it goes both ways. And so because of that, your friends, while you might be able to vent to them or say like, oh, I had this really rough day, or even let them know, oh my goodness, I don't know if my partner and I are going to make it. Can I come sleep at your house tonight? It's like they're there in those in the moment times, but they cannot be impartial. They are always going to either be, like advocating for you over whoever you're dating, or if you're going to make a decision that might impact them negatively, they might be like, well, if you move away, I'm going to miss you, right? So they're not going to be able to be impartial. Whereas your therapist in a therapy relationship, it is a one-way relationship. The direction is the therapist providing care and advocacy for you and your needs and your wants. So they're going to be exploring, why do you want to move away? Why do you want to, leave this partnership? And they're going to be listening to your answers as expert cues. Sometimes our friends can't do that. And you know what? I wouldn't encourage people to use their friends as their therapists solely on the fact of you want to keep that mutuality in your friendships. And you also don't want to make the fun and lightheartedness that it comes from building friendships and community have to turn to these like serious issues, because friendships are there to help carry us through the good times and the bad times. But when we turn our friends into our therapists, then it's like people can begin to feel a little like, oh, I don't know if I want to answer Courtney's call. Is it going to be this thing again? Right. And it begins to sometimes isolate people from their community because your friends aren't trained to be therapists. They don't know how to say sometimes, I love you. I can't keep going there with you. And so I think it's just a respectful thing to not lean on your friends in any sort of like long-term fashion for therapy, and to receive support from someone like a therapist who is there 100% to directionally give care to you.
That is so true. When I was, younger and I did not go to therapy, I was dealing with a lot of intense things. I moved to New York City from Detroit, and it was like writing this up, taking on these new things, being apart from my twin for the first time for a year. And it was just, it put a lot of pressure on friendships. And I felt, I burned through some of those first friends there. And I was like, okay, Dolly, you need to really, talk to someone who is going to be,
I think what I can say about, the state of the world and therapy and what we're seeing is that we got to such a place in the last few years that we were no longer able to be so distracted that we couldn't face our problems. Like we all, I think, got to a place where we had to meet ourselves in the last 3 years in one way or another. And so people are now figuring out what they want to do now that they've met themselves in a new way. We've seen people change jobs, careers, move out of state, move out of the country, change their philosophical or political ideologies. I mean, people have really undertaken some serious self-examination. And I think therapy fits in really well with that. We've seen a huge uptick in people utilizing therapy. And I think now is a great time to get support, especially if you're someone who finds yourself in a time of transition, which many of us do right now.
These conversations are in the world. They're on TikTok. And, so if you're somebody who has been pondering therapy or haven't gone for a while and want to start up again, want to get that support from your own home, try therapy with BetterHelp. I know there's a few words you want to say about BetterHelp and where it can and can't, a few disclaimers we must read. So
Right.
yeah.
So just to wrap up as a final disclaimer, astrology is not a replacement for licensed mental health
No,
treatment.
it's not.
And BetterHelp is absolutely able to match you with a therapist based on spirituality or preference, but that is a broad spectrum. So it may take a couple tries to find the right therapist that might share your beliefs. So we just want to have people keep that in mind.
Yes, and everyone who's listening, thank you so much for joining us. Take your emotions seriously. I mean, they're there as guides, but don't treat your feelings as the last fact to follow either. Go explore them, examine them, write in your journal, work with a therapist who's just there to help you unpack them and create the kind of decisions and lives that work for you. So thank you, Courtney Cope, a licensed therapist from BetterHelp, and the compassionate witness is the one I'm taking away with me. I'm going to walk through my day thinking about how that really fits to all my interactions. That is really a brilliant takeaway among many. So, and everyone else, you can follow us at AstroTwins or go get your daily, weekly, monthly horoscopes and so much more at astrostyle.com.